what we're going to be doing is spotlight. So to do spotlight, we need to have a UV'd object from Max or Maya that we're going to bring into spotlight and then do our texture on. Blender works fine as well. So I've got my object here. I'm just going to do a very simple UV to it. So let's come up here, unwrap UVW, select all the faces, tell it to be a box UV, then uncheck the box projection. Let's go look at this real fast. Open UV editor. Okay, so there it is. Then we come in here, uncheck box projection, uncheck rescale, and just tell it to go ahead and do a flatten mapping. So there it goes. It's fine. It doesn't really matter. Um, ZBrush is going to be able to work with this no problem. So once I do that, I can now export this piece. Okay, so I'll just go to Max, export, export selected, put on my desktop, building, test, okay, smoothing groups, great. All right, coming to ZBrush. I'm going to do a Z plugin FBX import. I'll go to my desktop, which is where I put it, and then I'll go to building test. It's going to say building imported. Just drag it out. Hit T. Remember, you can always focus the camera by holding Shift. So I'm going to frame it, scale it a little bit. Now again, the perspective's weird, so you always want to hit P, which turns on perspective mode, so it looks more correct. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to paint a texture onto this object. So to do this, we need to have a high amount of polygons, or this isn't going to work. So I'm going to also switch to like the skin shader, just so it's easier to see the texture I'm painting on there. And then we go ahead and Control D without smooth. With smooth on, ruined it, so I'm going to uncheck smooth, and then I'll hit Control D. So we're going to go up on our poly count up there to 10 million, might be enough. Let's see. Okay, so now what I have to do is I have to load my textures into Spotlight. So I'm going to click over here on Texture, and I'm going to import. And I've already picked a couple. I put them right there for Spotlight. So bricks, shows up there. And then I will do concrete, and last but not least, rusted. Okay, so now they're both there. Well, everything's there, but you can't do anything with it yet. Okay. So then up here we have our texture menu, and then we can add it to Spotlight. So I'm going to click on bricks. I'm going to choose Add to Spotlight. So it's going to go really, really big, and then I'm just going to kind of scale it down. I'm going to go ahead and go back up to texture. I'm just going to add all of mine to Spotlight. So there's concrete, add to Spotlight, turn off Lightbox, then texture, rusted, add to Spotlight, turn off Lightbox. Scale it down a little. So now what I have is this little doohickey here, which allows me to move my texture. So I'm going to move that over there. I'm going to click on the brick, and now I'm working on the brick. Okay, so you just click on it, and then you're working on that texture. So there's a couple things to remember here, is that you can scale this to whatever you need it to be, like however big you want it, and it's going to essentially paint exactly on your mesh. Okay. Now you could also mask out parts of your mesh so that way you can't paint on it. If you know, if you're being really careful or whatever. If you're particular about where stuff goes. So I'm actually going to rotate this so the white is on the bottom. Probably should just held shift, but that's okay. Close enough. All right, so now I've got that on there. I can kind of decide where I want it to be. That works. Okay. There we go. Just like that. So now what we can do is actually start painting. Now we can start painting the object. So I come up here and I'm going to check RGB and uncheck Z add. So this way it only paints just the color. So then I hit Z. Z turns off my spotlight tool, and now I'm allowed to simply paint on the object. Right, so I'm just going to paint all the way up. The windows I assigned a different material in Max, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that's on there, and then if I hit Shift Z again, it'll bring up my tool to adjust everything. If I hit Shift Z, it will turn off my spotlight entirely. And Z is how you switch between painting or not painting. So now I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to grab maybe my concrete, kind of come right there, and mix it in a little bit. Come in here, turn that off, and just kind of feather that in a little bit. So let's take a look at that. So Shift Z. Okay, so that looks pretty cool. So you can see it's literally just painting on the color. Okay, so it's very, very simple to do. And obviously, the more time you spend on your texture work and combining the different pieces to get what you want, the better. So I'm going to go paint both of these kind of right there. Shift Z. Okay, so that's my texture. And I kind of painted that so it's a little rusted under that window, so maybe we could have like some water damage or something right there. And I'm just going to use this side just so we can get through this tutorial quickly. So that's done. Now the hard part is actually getting this out of ZBrush, right? So to get it out of ZBrush, we're going to go down to Texture over here on our Tool side, and we're going to say Create, and we're going to say New from Polypaint. It's going to take a second and make it. So there it is, right? You can see it right there. And I'm going to click on Clone Texture. When I click Clone Texture, it's going to show up over here. Now this is where it gets kind of dumb, is that I have to then click on, with that texture, I have to go over here with it there, and I have to tell it to flip V. So it then matches the original UVs inside of Max. So once I do that, I can just simply export this texture. So I'll just call this textured building. You can leave it as a Photoshop if you want. I'll just do a JPEG so it's quick. So there it is. Sometimes your task manager will be over this button that says OK, but you could also just hit Enter on your keyboard. So now I've done that. Go back to Max, and I will open up my material editor. So there it is. This is my assigned material to the building. So let's click on that. So it was chosen. There it is. I now need to go to Material, Show Materials in Viewport, Realistic Materials with Maps. And it shows up. And again, it's going to look a little bit lower res right there until you do the render, and then it'll be your full resolution image. And it looks great. It's a fantastic way to texture. It's an easy way to texture. And that's about it.